Hello and good evening. Welcome to our webinar. We are so excited to have you joining us this evening on the subject of making the most of Virtual USA College Day. My name is Rowena. I'm one of the Education USA advisors here at the Fulbright Commission in London. And I'm absolutely delighted to welcome you to tonight's session. Tonight we'll be going through a short overview of the information you need to know about studying at an undergraduate level in the US, and some of the things that many British students find really useful in terms of thinking about what it might be like to study in the US and how you go about undertaking that process. And then we'll also touch on towards the end some of our top tips for making the most of USA College Day, which is happening on the 25th of September, so next weekend, and which we're really excited to welcome you and 150 US universities who also want to get to know you along the way as well. If you have any questions, feel free to pop them in the Q&A box, and at the end of the session, I will try and answer as many of them as possible along the way. Okay, fantastic. So getting started, a little bit about who we are and what we do. We're part of the Education USA network. Education USA offers free, unbiased advice to help UK students who are interested in studying in the United States. And we offer this advice to help you understand US universities and apply to them to help you achieve your dream of studying in the US. We're a part of a large network of advisors. There's actually 3 of us here in the UK, but we are super delighted to be here to serve you. And as part of this work, we organise USA College Day as well. So super, super excited and can't wait to take you through this information. I know there's a question that's just come in about recording the webinar. Yes, we're recording this webinar right now, and we will aim to send out a copy of this recording to everybody who registered towards the end of this week. So stay tuned for that. Okay, so the other thing I'd just say to you is, as you can probably tell from my accent, I grew up here in the UK, and I had the totally amazing opportunity to go and study in the US. I'd never been to America before I went to study there, and had a completely transformational experience studying at a university in California. There were highs, there were lows to that experience, but all around, I know it made me the person I am now today, and it's why I love being able to do this job. I wish someone had been able to tell me some of the things that we're able to share now when I was thinking about going to study in the US. So one of the big questions I get asked regularly is, why would somebody who is from the UK, why would you think about studying in the US? And there are lots and lots of different reasons for this, as many reasons as there are people who go and study in the US. So there's about 11,500 British students in a not pandemic year who study in the US. But here are some of the common reasons that British students often report for why they're excited to go and study in the US. So the first piece is about the reputation and variety of US universities. So many universities in the US are world-leading research centres. Perhaps they are doing innovative teaching. They have a reputation for just incredible academics, but they also are very different to each other. So unlike here in the UK, where UK universities might be quite designed in quite a similar way and operate in quite a similar way, in the US, each university has quite a lot of freedom to be quite different. And that means that there's all sorts of personalities of universities. And so there'll be a university that is a good fit for you along the way. Another reason British students often are excited about studying in the US is the vibrant campus life. This is something that's really important to you, US universities and US colleges, and they spend a lot of time thinking about how to have campus communities that are really involved in the life of the school, where learning happens both inside and outside the classroom, where there's a really strong sense of school spirit. All of these things are often part of a campus life on a US college campus. Another reason that British students often are interested in US universities is the academic flexibility. Maybe if you're listening to this, let me know in the chat if you were the kind of person who struggled to choose your GCSE options, or maybe you struggled to choose your A-level options. That was me all over. I hated being asked to choose my subjects and you know, to narrow down my choices. I really like studying lots of things. And it turns out that the US is perfect if that's your kind of style, if that's how you like to do things. So there's this thing called liberal arts. Most US universities and colleges operate this. It's this idea of studying a much wider breadth of subjects to start your degree, and that you go in potentially undecided. So you don't have to know what you want to study when you arrive at a US university. And students in their first and second year will be studying a broad range of subjects. So they might be doing a math class, and they might be doing a sociology class, and they might be taking a film class, and all sorts of different things. And this idea that your education is about this fully formed, interconnected, interdisciplinary approach. And then what you'll find is that students towards the end of their second year do something called declaring a major, choosing their major, which is the subject that they choose to then specialize in, normally for that last couple of years of their study. So you end up with a degree in, I don't know, chemistry or engineering or whatever it is, but there's an expectation that you are perhaps thinking more broadly than just one single subject studying in the US. And for some students, that sounds like a dream come true. Another reason that some British students are super interested in studying in the US is funding opportunities. There are some really great scholarships and some really great financial aid available to international students, and can make US education incredibly affordable. We'll have a whole section of this presentation about how that works. So just an area to kind of keep an eye on along the way. You might also be thinking about studying in the US because you're looking to set apart your CV from other people. Maybe you're looking to set yourself apart from other job applicants in the future. And that kind of international perspective from studying in a different country might just be the way to do that. And then finally, lots of British students also want to explore US culture and the country that makes up the US, and learn more about its people as well. So these are all reasons that many British students tell us that they're interested in studying in the US. So a couple of key differences that I just want to let you know about. I'm sure many of us are familiar with the standard UK university degree lasting 3 years. For a BA or a BSc in a particular subject. A big difference in the US is that a standard undergraduate degree is normally 4 years long. If you're looking at a BA or a BSc, 2 years if you're looking at an associate's degree. So it's just a little bit different. Don't be surprised if you're seeing references to a 4-year degree or alternatively a 2-year degree in your research. Another big difference is when you apply to the university or college that you're looking at, you're going to be applying to join the university as a whole, not to a particular department. So when you apply to a UK university, you might be applying for a seat on the chemistry course, and you'll be read by the chemistry department, who will be interested in your chemistry grades and your chemistry interest. For a US university, you're not applying to a specific department. Instead, you're looking to join that first year class. And so the admissions office, especially if it's a selective university, will be interested to know what you're going to be like as a person on their campus and part of their first year class. I'm going to talk more about that in a moment as well, but it's just a big difference between applying to the UK and the US. Another big difference is there are no set fees or deadlines. So unlike in the UK, where there is a set amount that universities can charge for tuition, in the US, universities can charge what they like. So that you might see that there are a wide variety of differences depending on the universities you're looking at. And there's no set deadline, so each university will run its own admissions process to its own deadlines. There's some broad kind of groupings that some universities use, but just be aware that there isn't set deadlines that's kind of nationally across all US universities. And then finally, I just want to quickly mention law and medicine. Happy to answer questions on these in the Q&A, but just to flag that both of these subjects, while very popular as undergraduate degrees here in the UK, if you're looking to study in the US, these two subjects aren't offered at undergraduate level. They are graduate-only degrees, so you would do an undergraduate degree and then a graduate degree in law or in medicine after doing your undergraduate degree. There are a couple of reasons, particularly for medicine, that I would often recommend that if you are interested in pursuing clinical medicine, you may find that pursuing a UK medical degree is a better fit for what you want to do, but very happy to answer questions about that in the Q&A if there's interest. Perfect, I'm going to move on from here. So sometimes I get a question about what kind of timeline, if I'm interested in studying in the US, what kind of timeline should I be looking at? So I just want to pop this up here first. If you're interested in studying in the US, this is what the process would look like. So the first thing that you want to be doing is thinking about your research, spending time on researching universities. One of the big errors that I sometimes see British students making is they just jump straight to the end and try and apply, and then haven't necessarily done the research and the thinking that helps them actually put together better applications later down the line. And so this kind of research process, if you're in English year 12, English or Welsh year 12 or before, it's a perfect time to be doing this research. If you are in English, Welsh year 13, or Northern Irish year 14 or S6 in Scotland, then you, at this point in the year, you are into the kind of admission cycle. So that research will need to be done in a fairly speedy way in order to apply in this cycle. So we apply for a US university degree the year before you plan to join the university. So if you are in your final year of school, then you would be applying in that year to join the following summer. So getting that research done is a really important part of this process. If you're in English and Welsh year 12 or before, or S5 in Scotland, then you can also register for any admissions exams if you choose to take them. We're going to talk about those more in a minute. And then over that summer period, so as we come into your final year of high school, you're going to be wanting to kind of finalize your selection of universities that you plan to apply to. So during that autumn period of your final year of high school, that's when you want to be putting together your applications and submitting them to the universities. And then somewhere normally in springtime, you'll be receiving your admissions decisions for the universities that you've applied to. If you're successful and admitted and you choose to go to your US university, it's that early summer period when you'll be applying for a US student visa, which if you're not a US citizen, you would need to be able to study, preparing for your departure, and then starting a degree normally in August. So if you're applying this year, you would be looking to start your degree in August 2022. So hopefully this has given you a sense of the kind of timeline. The earlier you start this process, the better it is. You'll do the applying in your final year of high school, but the more research and the more preparation you can do, the better you will be in, a better place that you'll be in. Okay, so how do we go about choosing universities? So this is an area we get an awful lot of questions about, and it's also a struggle for American universities as well. I mentioned before earlier in this session that US universities are really different to each other, and it's really important to find a university that is going to be a good fit for what you're looking to achieve. So the first thing you want to do is have a think about what is your fit. Do you want to be in a university where you're going to have perhaps a set curriculum to follow? So maybe you're looking for a university where all students in the first year, while they're studying a broad range of subjects, maybe they study all the same subjects. Maybe that sounds interesting to you. Perhaps there's a university instead on the other end of the spectrum that just says, here's our course catalogue, you pick anything you like to do. Maybe you're looking for a university that is a small institution where you're going to get lots of help and support and mentoring from professors to really achieve everything that you're looking to achieve from your studies. Or maybe you're really interested in going to a massive university, maybe 70, 80, 90,000 students even, and you're looking for that big buzz of the big sports game and that kind of really big athletics culture. Maybe you are looking, maybe you're a student athlete and you're interested in a particular school that's playing in a particular division. Maybe you might want to think about whether you want to be in an urban environment or a college town. All of these things are big questions to be asking, and each university is going to be different from another. So it's really important that you start to understand, what are you looking for from this process? What universities would be a good fit for what you want to achieve? And then, are you a good fit for what they're looking for? So determining that fit is really important, asking yourself those questions, and then using that as a framework for your research. So you can start looking at each university and going, is this a good, does this line up with my sense of fit? It's a really, really important part of this process, particularly if you're looking to apply to a selective university. So you want to be thinking about that sense of fit, and you want to be thinking a little bit about the universities that you would be interested in. So once you start to identify the different options, you want to then start to narrow those options. So you can use all sorts of college search engines. One of my favorites is called the Big Future College Search. If you Google Big Future College Search, it brings up a website from College Board, which is like a search engine of US colleges. You can choose the factors that you're interested in to help you filter out the kind of 4,000 different universities and colleges in the US to start to build lists out that you're particularly interested in. If it were me, I would be keeping a spreadsheet of my research just so I can keep track and maybe some important deadlines, maybe some important information, perhaps web pages from that university that particularly stood out, and just so I can keep myself organized in this process. Especially important, keep a track of any deadlines, and also, we'll talk about this more in a minute, but any information about financial aid or scholarships that you're coming across as well. So you want to be doing that university research, spending those times on looking at the different options, really getting beyond perhaps universities you've maybe heard of. Just because you might have heard of a few universities doesn't mean they're the only universities out there. In the UK, we've got about 120 universities that offer undergraduate degrees. In the US, there are 4,500 universities that offer an undergraduate degree. There's a really high chance that you've not heard of most of those universities, and therefore doing your research, hearing about the different options, and kind of assessing whether they're a good fit for you, it becomes really important in this process. So just wanting to put a shout out there for university research. You could also spend time on things like TikTok or on Instagram or on Facebook pages, on university websites. All of these are amazing resources. Universities spend a lot of time on their social media profiles, again, to help you get a flavour of what they're all about and what they're interested in, and to help you guide your sense of fit. Another area I get a lot of questions about is around the Ivy League. So I just want to make sure that we've done a little bit of myth busting here about the Ivy League. So the Ivy League contains 8 universities, only 8, and they are a group of schools that got together to play sports against each other. So they're in driving distance of each other, and they started a football league, an American football league, and they would drive between each other and play sports against each other. That is what the Ivy League is. It's only 8 universities in the northeast corner of the United States, and there's no joining or leaving the Ivy League. So universities like MIT, like Stanford, these are not in the Ivy League and never will be. So just be aware when you start using that term that it isn't often what we think it is here in the UK. It's also not the equivalent of the Russell Group here in the UK. Because of its geographical focus, it doesn't mean that you're not seeing a whole lot of other amazing universities that are spread out across the US. It tends to focus on a small group of private research institutions, which may or may not be a good fit for what you're looking for. So make sure you're not limiting your options by only focusing down on this small group of universities. Another thing to just say is, because we're talking about 4,000 US universities, when we say top 1% in the UK, we're talking about 1 institution, 1.5 institutions. But if we say top percent in the US, we're talking actually about 40 different universities. So again, just being really aware that our frame of reference needs to change. And then the other thing I'd just say about schools in what's called the Ivy League tend to be extremely competitive. So one school that lots of people have heard of, Harvard College, you're looking at in the realm of 50,000 applications for 1,000 seats in their first year class. So it's incredibly competitive schools. So just an encouragement not to limit yourself when you are choosing your universities to apply for. There's lots of amazing schools out there that may well be a better fit for you beyond this small group of 8 institutions. Okay, another area I get a lot of questions about is funding your studies. And I'm actually going to put it here just because it has a real relationship to your university choosing process and your finding that sense of fit. So for some students, this area might be less necessary, but for other students, finding funding may be a really important part of your journey. And for many students I work with, having funding in place is really necessary to make the dream of studying in the US happen. So funding is a challenge for American students as well as international students, i.e. any of us who don't have an American passport. And so it's just something that you want to be thinking about as early as possible. If funding is something you're going to need, it needs to be part of your choosing process. So here is some of the things that I want to share about funding. So unfortunately, in the UK, we have the UK student loans system to attend a UK university. Unfortunately, we can't take our UK student loan with us to study in the US. It just doesn't go over the ocean to the US. So we need to be a bit more thoughtful about how to fund an American education. So these are the 4 sources of funding that an American university you need to be thinking about if you wanted to study at an American university. So the first area that a university will be expecting is kind of personal or family funds. That might be money from parents or guardians or other family members to help fund your education, or perhaps any savings that you have yourself. So Americans have a culture of saving up for college and contributing what they can to the college to pay for the education. So just be aware that this is what many US universities will be expecting. The second area I want to highlight here is often an area I see for British students being one of the biggest areas of funding higher education for British students. And that's funding that comes from the universities themselves. So US universities some of them can be very, very generous to international students. And so there may be funding available from the university to help you study in the US. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in 1 second. Another area of funding that you could explore is what we've called here external funding bodies. What do I mean by that? These are perhaps charities or organizations, foundations that fund international students or American students to study in the US. They could be completely unrelated to the university, or maybe they have a particular relationship with a particular university. So there's lots of those out there. Some offer fairly small amounts in funding, and then there are others that offer huge scholarships as well. And then finally, I just put a note here about loans. As I said, UK student loan doesn't go to the US, and I would always just be really cautious of any kind of commercial loans if you were thinking about studying in the US. Unfortunately, as international students, we don't qualify for American student loans from the American government because they're offered to American citizens. So there are some private loan companies out there. I just always ask, is there other ways to fund this? And if you're coming across universities that only offer loans, I would just question, are they the right universities to be applying for? Is there other universities that might actually have funding available? So just being really aware of what you're getting into if you're looking at student loans along the way. So just to touch back on university funding being one of those areas that I see many British students who go and study in the US being really successful in achieving significant amounts of funding to study. So university funding is funding that the university has, and they want to attract the very best students and to ensure that the very best students are able to come and study at their institution. So this money is often referred to in some different ways, and we're going to break that down. One area of funding that we see some universities offering is something called need-based aid. So need-based aid is money that you would need in order to be able to go and study. It's essentially money that the university will assess you and your family in terms of their finances and assess what your family can afford to pay towards your education. So each university will have something called the cost of attendance. So that's the cost of both tuition, but also living costs if you're staying on campus, maybe any extra fees, or even sometimes like things like health insurance or transportation costs, perhaps sometimes even an estimation of personal expenses like a mobile phone, clothing, eating out, fun money, things like that. They will assess what that costs, and they will roll that into one big number called the cost of attendance. So you'll find that on any US university's website. You can Google like cost of attendance and the name of the university, and it will bring up a page covering it. You'll find that information there. Sometimes those numbers are really big, but remember that don't just compare it to a UK tuition fee. Remember that you would need to roll in the living costs and other personal expenses and things like that to attend a UK university to be able to compare like from like to like. That cost of attendance number is per year. So if you're doing a 4-year undergraduate degree, it will be that amount times 4 to achieve the bachelor's degree that you're looking to achieve. So need-based aid, how does this fit in? If a university offers need-based aid, what they will do is look at the cost of attendance, and then they will ask a set of detailed questions alongside your application about your family and its finances. And they will assess what resources are available to your family. And then from there, they'll perform a calculation and come up with an amount that they think is reasonable based on your family's situation to be able to contribute to the cost of attending that university. And so for some families, that may be lots of the cost of attendance. For other families, it may be very little or even none of the cost of attendance, just because there aren't the resources available to that family. And then the university will come in and offer either a grant, sometimes a grant plus a job on campus, to make up that difference per year. So this can be a really generous area of funding for British students. This is grant money, so it doesn't need to be paid back, and is a way that many British students use to achieve their dream of studying at a US university. Not all universities offer need-based aid, so do check out the university web pages during your research phase and figure those pieces out. Another area is merit-based scholarships. So these are not because you necessarily need the money, but because you're the best at something. So merit-based scholarships will be offered, perhaps you're the best academically, or maybe you have some of the top test scores in the applications to that university. Maybe you are a talented trumpet player and the university has a scholarship that it wishes to award to talented musicians. Maybe you're a talented athlete and they want to offer you a sports scholarship. All of these things are merit-based scholarships. So these can vary in size. Sometimes they're like $5,000 per year. Sometimes they can be like the whole cost of attendance plus some, if you're looking at something like the Moorhead-Kane Scholarship. These are merit-based scholarships that are offered to students. Sometimes they cover the whole cost of tuition. There's all sorts of different ones available. And many universities will offer these, and these don't take into account your family resources, and so there's no assessment made of the family's finances. And then finally, we just mentioned here sports scholarships. Let me know in the Q&A if we have any student athletes who are particularly interested in finding out more about the sports scholarship process. Happy to jump into that at the end, but know that sports scholarships are a form of merit-based scholarships to study in the US. Okay, we talked a little bit about external funding bodies. I just want to highlight here that these can be a really great example. I mentioned the Moorhead-Kane Scholarship, and that's a good example of a scholarship coming from the external funding bodies. The Moorhead-Kane Scholarship is open to British students, and it is a scholarship that covers the full cost of attendance, so that's all the living costs and all the tuition costs, for study at UNC Chapel Hill, which is a University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. So it's only available for that particular university, but it covers all of the costs of studying at that university. And then plus on top of that, it also funds summer experiences for students who win the scholarship. So that's available for 4 British students every single year. And you can find out about that selection process on the Moorhead-Kane website. If you just Google Moorhead-Kane, that's another example of an external funding body that is funding. There's lots of them out there, so do take a look. Some of them offer smaller scholarships, but some offer very, very generous scholarships as well. Okay, I often get a lot of questions about funding, so feel free to ask away in the Q&A at the end if you've got questions about funding. I did just want to put here a little piece about funding strategy. I talked to a lot of students about how to afford US higher education, and so just wanted to put this here. You can think about how you can make sure that studying at a US university is affordable. And these are some of the levers that you can use to help you achieve kind of an affordable education. So one thing you could think about is the cost of living. So just like if you studied in the UK and decided you wanted to study at, I don't know, UCL in the middle of central London, that's probably going to be more expensive cost of living than if you decided you wanted to attend the University of Lancaster, where likely there's a lower cost of living, both in terms of housing and in terms of activities and things like that. Exactly the same principle. If you want to live in the middle of Manhattan, it's probably going to be a higher cost of living than if you wanted to live in a state like, I don't know, Michigan or something like that, where there's a lower cost of living. So you can control the costs through the decisions that you make around college location, college choice, and the kind of cost of living. Another thing you can think about is the cost of tuition. So different universities will have different costs. You may find that state universities, so things like the University of Kansas or the University of Texas, may well have lower costs of tuition than private universities have. And so you may be able to think about controlling your costs in that way by choosing a state university. But on the other hand, you may find that actually different universities may have different funding. So although a university may have a very high cost of tuition or cost of attendance, you might actually find that they also offer perhaps more generous financial aid or funding to students. So it is a real piece of doing your homework, thinking carefully through this process, and making sure that this is part of your research. If funding is important to you, put it in the center of your sense of fit, and make sure it's building into your thinking. I get a lot of phone calls in about March, April time each year from students who have been admitted to universities that are literally their dream. They're so excited. And then they say, oh, but Rowena, I really want to go, but I can't afford it. Is there any scholarships available? And unfortunately, by April, in that year before if you want to enroll that summer, unfortunately, April is often just too late. The scholarships happen much earlier in the year. And you also want to be thinking about which universities actually offer these things. I get a lot of questions about schools like UCLA. A lot of people say, oh, can I get a scholarship for UCLA? And unfortunately, the reality is that there are not as many scholarships, if any, available at UCLA for international students as there might be at other universities. So can we be flexible with our choices of colleges to identify universities that are going to have funding available to make studying in the US possible? And that's always the question that I've got. Okay, we're going to move really quickly into a section about completing an application. Again, I get lots and lots of questions about this. So each university can run its own application process. And so each university, some universities have literally their own application form. Make sure you're doing your research, make sure you're looking at what each university needs from you. But there are some broad principles in this process of a US university that they are broadly all looking for or will fall into an application, and we'll go through those now. So what are they looking for when they assess candidates to join their university, particularly if they are a selective university? What are they looking for? What are they interested in? What are they hoping comes through this? And here are some of the things that they're looking for. So first of all, they want to know, what do you like as a student? And they'll use your GCSE results and your A-level results if you're in England and Wales, or they'll look at your Highers and your Nat 5s if you're in Scotland, or your GCSEs and A-levels if you're in Northern Ireland, or if you've done it IB or the American high school curriculum, whatever your high school has been teaching you, that's where they're going to look. What grades have you achieved? What subjects have you taken? How have you done in your applications, in your grades, to understand your academic potential? So they'll be weighing those up against other people applying from both the UK, but also in other countries as well. I also want to know about your academic fit. How are you a good fit for the university? Are you joining a university that loves asking big questions? Is there evidence of that in your application? Or are you somebody who takes a very thoughtful approach? Maybe that's a really good fit for their institution. Have you thought about whether, you want to do engineering? Have you thought about whether they offer an engineering major? Maybe you're particularly interested in music or dance or something like that. Are they offering you programs that are a good fit, and are they teaching them in a way that is going to be a good fit for you? All of this forms part of this idea of academic fit. Unlike a UK university, US universities and colleges are not just interested in your academics, however. We talked a little bit at the beginning about applying to the university rather than just a specific department. Admissions officers are trying to build a really interesting group of people to join their university each year. So one of the things that they do is practice something called holistic admission, which means that they're not just looking at your grades, but they're also interested in who you are as a person. So as part of that, they're going to ask you for a list of your extracurricular activities. So these are things that you do when you're not at school, whatever it is that you do, whether it's clubs, whether it's sports, whether it's hobbies and interests, maybe it's volunteering, maybe it's caring for a younger sibling, maybe it's a part-time job or service in your community. Whatever that is, they're interested to know about it so they can figure out what it says about you as a person and the kind of person, the kind of community member that you might be when you join their university. So they'll ask for a list of your extracurriculars to get a greater sense of you, and they're also interested in your personal attributes. This is like a term for like things like your leadership. Are you a leader? Are you a reflective thinker? Maybe you're a very kind person and they're looking for kind people to join their university. Maybe you are somebody who's very mature and you're very used to taking on responsibility. That could be a real asset to their community. Perhaps you're somebody who stands up for what you believe in and you take a stand. Is there evidence that you've done that in your application in your high school years? Maybe there is. Perhaps that's a space for you in their campus community. But US universities are looking to build really rounded groups of different people, so they don't want everyone to be the same. So in this process, you absolutely want to make sure that you are being your true, authentic self and letting that shine through, and that will be what they're looking for in the application process. So that's how they measure those things. What goes actually into an application? So here are the things that normally make part of most universities' applications. So each university you apply to, you're going to be submitting these materials for. So there's something called the application form. This has got biographical detail, name, email address, phone number, all of those kind of things. And that's a fairly standard part of most universities' processes. Might have space to talk about your parents. Who are they? What jobs do they do? Maybe you list out your siblings. On your application form, you're probably going to fill in what exams you're doing at school at the moment. And then you'll put in all of that kind of information. On the application form, there'll also be spaces to talk about your extracurriculars. And so you'll put those into the application form as well. Most universities will also ask you for an essay or two or even three. So that's a really important part. And what you absolutely do not want to do is copy and paste your UCAS personal statement. These essays, we'll talk about them a little bit more in a minute, but these essays are a really different style of writing to perhaps how we write here in the UK, but they're a way of giving the admissions office reading your application a window into who you are and what you're all about. And they may ask for an additional essay to help you demonstrate your research, demonstrate your sense of fit, and why you would be a good fit at that university. The university, on the application form, there may be some space to put in about your admissions exam scores. We're going to talk about those in a second as well, and if you even need to take them. But if you do decide you want to take them and you do decide you want to submit them, then there's a space in the application form for those too. We'll talk more about those in a second. And then there's also a space in the application for documents to be produced by your school. So when you apply to a US college or university, crucial parts of your application aren't even done by you, but instead they're made by your high school teachers. So your teachers you will ask 2 or 3 of your teachers to write references for you, these recommendation letters, and they will write those separately. You won't see them, and they will submit them to the university on your behalf to help support your application and give university an extra additional view of you as a student. Your high school will also put together a document called your transcript. A transcript is, for us here in the UK, actually a really simple document. It basically lists your name and the name of your school, and then it will list out your GCSEs or your Nat 5s or any other qualifications that you did when you were 16, and then again, any qualifications that you're working on now, whether that's Highers or IB or A-levels, whatever, EPQs, things like that. It will list out those, and it will give your teachers predictions for your grades that they think that you will likely achieve on those. So that's what a transcript is, and it's a document made for you by your school and submitted on behalf by your teachers. And then finally, something you'll be responsible for is an application fee, and it's not uncommon for US universities to ask for an application fee alongside the rest of the application documents. These can range in price from a few dollars right the way up to kind of $150 to apply. Please don't be put off by these. If you know that these application fees would cause financial hardship for your family, you can always write to the university and ask if they have an application fee waiver, which are there to help students who can't afford these application fees apply to the university anyway. So just know that that is available. So these are the things that make up the application form. Of the application itself, we're going to dig into a couple of those different areas just so that we can make sure we've covered all of our bases. So one area we get a lot of questions about is the admissions tests. It's one of the areas that people always want to ask us about. So there are two main admissions exams in the US. They are called the ACT and the SAT. They're not called ACT and SAT, they're called ACT and SAT. ACT and SAT are essentially the same test. There's very little, there's no difference in the way that the universities see them, and they broadly test the same information, but they are slightly different in format. So you may find you do better on one than the other. The important thing to note is these tests have been designed for American students. So they're multiple choice, they're about 4 hours or so long, and they test things like your maths, your reading, your language skills, your grammar, and if it's the ACT, they'll also be testing things like your data interpretation through the science section. They're an area that if you are going to take these exams, I would spend time studying. They're not an exam I would walk into just out of school in the UK and go in unprepared for. I would really spend time studying for them. The thing I just want to flag is that at the moment, especially this year, US universities almost entirely have recognized that with the pandemic, it's been really difficult for people to be able to test for these exams. And therefore, most universities are what's called test optional at the moment. So if you're applying this year and you're in, kind of final year of high school and you're applying this year, do check the US university website as to if the university is test optional. And if it is, I would seriously question whether you need to spend time on these exams. US universities have confirmed over and over again that if they are test optional, they do not require these exams, and that you won't be it won't be unhelpful if you haven't submitted them. Going forward, some universities, as we hopefully come out of the pandemic situation, some universities may choose to revert back to taking these exams. But just know that the test optional is a thing, and most US universities, this cycle at least, are not expecting these exams. If you're in like year 11 or year 10 or something like that, you've got lots of time to prepare for these exams, and you may find that some universities that you're interested in are planning to bring these tests back into their admissions system. A couple of questions I often get asked. Yes, you can take them in the UK. They're offered a few times a year, so normally on a weekend. At test centres across the UK. You can check out our website. We've got links to both the ACT and the SAT, and it really doesn't matter which one you take. If the university does ask you for these or you want to submit these, it literally doesn't matter whether it's the ACT or the SAT. There's lots of help and resources on our website about links off to information that you can use to prepare for these exams, test papers, helpful guides, all sorts of things. And indeed, you can also pay someone if you are interested in helping you prepare for these exams as well. I will leave it there on admissions tests. If you have got questions and want to know more, happy to answer those in the Q&A as well. Okay, so we've talked about a few different parts of the application. And so I just want to flag some of the ways that we can help you from tonight. I haven't got endless time to be able to go through all the different pieces of information. So I just want to flag other sources of help and support from us at Education USA. So the first thing to do is you may want to go and check out our website if you haven't already. We have full comprehensive guides, pages and pages about all of the different things that I've talked about tonight and a lot more. So please do go and check our website, and if you go into the USA section, you'll find a guide to undergraduate applications. It's totally the place to go and check out loads of resources, loads of webinars, loads of videos, all sorts of information to help support your application, including a full guide to what's called the Common Application, which is an application form that lots of universities use. We've literally broken it down question by question. So please do feel free to go and have a look at all of those resources. We also take questions. Our team here take questions. If you've got further questions you want to ask, you can email us or phone us. You can also book a Zoom appointment with us. We have advising hours throughout the week, and so you can just book in a slot and speak one-to-one with one of us. And we can give you all sorts of information about how to study in the US and answer your questions individually. I also want to flag that we hold all sorts of events about studying in the US. At the moment, these are all virtual, but just know that that program, that list is all on our website. You can sign up for different events and keep an eye on the website because we're always adding new ones. Sometimes we'll work with universities to present on a topic, and sometimes it will be Education USA advisors. Lots of different events happening about studying in the US. I also just want to flag the Sutton Trust US program, which is a program we run here at Fulbright. Sutton Trust US program is for high achieving Year 12 students in England, Wales. That's S5 and Year 13 in Northern Ireland. So if you are in one of those groups and for a high achieving Year 12 state school student who is interested in studying in the United States, then please do check out the Sutton Trust US program to help you put together an application and learn more about US universities as well. And we've had hundreds of students come through that program and all head off to US universities. So please do check that out. Applications for that will be opening in November. Okay, so there's a few sources of help and support out there. I also just wanted to cover off quickly a little bit about making the most of College Day. So hopefully the information I've shared with you so far is useful context as you're approaching USA College Day. I'm hoping if you've signed up for this webinar that you have already registered for College Day, which is happening on Saturday, the 25th of September. If you haven't yet, do make sure you go and register. It is an incredible opportunity. It's our 44th year. And we are super excited to welcome more than 150 US universities who are all coming to meet with British students just like you. And these universities come from all over the US, all sorts of different types of university, and they are here to meet with amazing British students just like you. So here are my top tips for making the most of what might seem a little bit like an overwhelming event to start with. So here are my tips. So first thing you want to do is get prepared. Have a plan, start doing some research, have a look at the universities attending College Day. You can find a list on our website. Start having a look around, start figuring out which ones you might be interested in visiting, what kind of questions do you have for those universities, really kind of getting prepared and have a plan. You've got 5 hours, but 5 hours could go really quickly. You're unlikely to get around all 150. So perhaps make a list or something like that of the universities that you definitely want to go and see. On the day, you're going to want to check your email and any junk folders for your link to the event. I'm going to send out the links to our event platform on Friday, the 24th. So do keep an eye out for those. You won't be able to access the platform without having that link, and we will be sending that out to the email address that you registered with. Make sure you're in a quiet place where you feel comfortable talking. Our platform encourages video interaction, so make sure you've got a device, make sure it's charged and switched on, and if you can, make sure the camera's working, and you'll be able to go in and have a conversation virtually, but face-to-face with an admissions officer. So make sure that you're feeling somewhere where you feel comfortable and you're able to do that, perhaps not the back of the bus or, you know, in the gym or something, but instead you might want to think about finding a quiet place where you know that you're going to have reliable internet access and you're going to be able to make the most of College Day. Perhaps bring a notepad so you can take any notes, and you can also prep some really good questions, right? So having a think beforehand on the day, thinking about what kind of questions might you want to ask. Are there questions about what it's like to study at the university, what it's particularly, you know, who is a good fit at that university? You want to probably avoid questions. I said good here because you probably want to avoid questions that you could get right from the front page of their website. So if you want to show your interest, show that you've been doing a bit of research along the way. Other things to just note, Education USA advisors are around to help. So if you've got questions more generally about studying in the US, me and the rest of the team will be around and we are here to help. Also going to be holding a number of seminars throughout the day that will break up applying to US universities into different topics. So if you want to be able to go and join those, you can in our event platform, you'll just be able to navigate to those. So we'll have sessions on all sorts of kind of topics like funding, US higher ed, we'll dig into that a bit more. We'll hear from experts around applying to US universities, and there'll even be the opportunity to hear from British students who are already studying in the US about their own experiences as well. My top tip would be think broadly, think open-mindedly, go and visit some universities that you've not heard of before. You might be really surprised at what you find along the way. A few things about speaking to admissions reps, a couple of strategy suggestions I have here. If you're speaking to reps, my first tip would be strategic. So some universities have an admissions officer there. You want to be thinking like, how can you make yourself stand out? How can you be thoughtful with your questions? It kills me every year we run College Day when I sometimes see admissions reps not talking to anyone, and I know that they've got big scholarships and big amounts of financial aid and they're looking to recruit British students and nobody's talking to them, and instead everyone's grouped around one or two other universities who maybe don't have as much funding available as the university that does. So being strategic, thinking, how can I use my time? If there's lots of other people trying to ask questions at the university you've come into, maybe think about coming back a little bit later on, and perhaps go and find some universities that don't have anyone talking to them, because you never quite know what you might find along the way. I would definitely recommend that students lead the conversation, as tempting as it is to let mum and dad start asking lots of questions. It looks so much better if you, the student, the person who actually wants to go and study at the university, is there asking the questions. And if you're a parent of a young person, just really encouraging them to feel empowered to ask those questions and to really make the most of the opportunity will stand them in really good stead for when they actually apply to a US university. Make sure you're registering your interest by clicking on the button in the booth. So something that I think makes college day go really well is if you're like interested in the university, saying, I'd love to sign up for your mailing list, how can I do that? And the rep will be able to then give you information, perhaps a sign up form, and you will be able to register your interest, get into their mailing list, you know, really thinking about how can you make yourself stand out, and how can you show that you're interested in their university? How can you get more information? And the more you offer that, the easier you'll find it, the you know, and it's a way of being memorable to the rep as well. So just a real encouragement, if you are visiting a university, I'd really encourage you to think about signing up for their mailing list. That's a very normal thing to do at a college fair. And then the final thing is just if you have had a great chat with an admissions rep, you can always ask their email address, and then you can always drop them an email afterwards, just saying thank you for the chat. Maybe you've got a follow-on question, or if you just want to say thank you so much, it was so great speaking with you today. These are the kinds of things that can make a real difference in the admissions process, because that person may well be the person who reads your application when you actually apply to that university. So you really want to be thinking about how you can put yourself in the best position possible to answer, you know, be memorable and be thoughtful about your presence. So we're now into the Q&A session. I'm very conscious of the time. So I'm going to be here now answering any questions. If you've got any questions, please feel free to use the Q&A box. I will go through those. And I will answer as many questions as I possibly can. I am very conscious of time, so if you do need to head off, I totally understand. And I just would encourage you to make sure that you've registered for USA College Day, and that you are preparing to make the most out of that event as well. And totally appreciate that people may need to head off. But in the meantime, I will try and answer any questions about studying in the US that you want to ask. So, first question, just to confirm, yep, a recording of this webinar will be sent out to the people who registered for this event after the event. It will probably be towards the end of this week. So that is that question. Any other questions? Oh, no problem. Not a problem whatsoever. Any other questions that anyone wants to ask? Oh, okay, great. I've got two questions here. I can see one question which is about essays, and can I just talk a little bit more about the essays? Absolutely. So most universities will ask you to provide an essay as part of your application. If you're using the common application, there are some prompts that you can use to select. And these are things like, tell us about a time when things haven't gone to plan, or share an aspect of your identity that's really fundamental to who you are. These are really big questions. And if none of the prompts are interesting to you, don't worry, there's one that says, please feel free to share an essay or that you would like to share with us. So there's literally a world of options. What I would just say is you absolutely don't want to put your UCAS personal statement into the Common App. You want to be thoughtful about how to approach writing an essay. What you want to do is perhaps share an anecdote or maybe a couple of anecdotes to show who you are. So great essays I've read from British students include an essay about one student who was from Great Yarmouth, who was talking about his shift at McDonald's. So he had a part-time job working at McDonald's, and his essay was the story of one particular shift and the people that he encountered during that shift. And what you got a sense of through that essay is a real sense of who he was as a person and how he approached the people around him and how he approached problem solving. And he illustrated that through the essay. So if you're looking for resources around essays, a really good site I definitely recommend is collegeessayguy.com, I think it is, College Essay Guy. If you Google that, there is an American who produces a lot of really helpful resources, activities, tools, examples about writing college essays. There's loads of books on Amazon if you want to purchase a book about American college essays and use that. You can also have a look on university websites, and you'll find that lots of them have example essays from previous year students to show you what they kind of look like. So great question. Thank you. Oh, another question here. How many universities can I apply to? Great question. It's a little bit different to the UK with UCAS, where you're perhaps applying to 5 universities. In the US, in theory, you could apply to as many universities as you want. I would probably caveat that with you want to be applying to universities where you know you're going to be a good fit and where perhaps you've spent time on an application. So you could apply to 100 universities, but if it's 100 not very good applications because you've rushed them all, then you might find that that's not as helpful as if you had perhaps narrowed your choices and really spent time on applying to, say, I don't know, 6 to 10 universities that you'd really spent time putting together really good applications for. But you've not got a limit like you do here in the UK. But again, just thinking, where am I going to be a really good fit? Okay. Other questions? When should we apply for funding at each university? Is this something we do alongside the application, or do we do it beforehand? So this is a really good question. First of all, you want to check on the university's website to see, do they have funding available? What kinds of funding do they have available, and is it available to international students? If the answers are yes, and if you've got kind of clarity, you want to, I'm so sorry, there's a helicopter going past my window at this point. If they say yes, there's funding available, and if you are interested in applying for that, you want to follow whatever guidance they give. If it's need-based financial aid, that guidance will normally be that you need to fill out a separate set of financial forms that you will submit alongside your application to join the university. So you want to make sure that you've got those, your application and your financial forms in basically at the same time. If, however, it's perhaps a merit-based scholarship, there may be different advice that they want to give you. So it might be that you need to submit a separate application form for that merit-based scholarship, in which case, or even a completely separate application process. Or maybe they'll just say everybody who applies to our university will be considered for this merit-based scholarship. So again, you want to just really check the website, make sure that you understand what it is, and also make sure you've noticed any deadlines. Some merit scholarships have earlier deadlines than the main deadline that perhaps the university has. So you might need to apply by the 1st of December, even though the university application deadline is, I don't know, 1st of January or something like that. You want to be just really aware and do your research, do your homework so that you're really ready to hit that process. But those two, if you are applying for need-based aid, those 2 applications will go in at the same time and be considered alongside each other. Okay, next question. So a student athlete interested in applying for a golf scholarship. Okay, perfect. So if somebody is a student athlete, if you're looking to apply for an athletics scholarship, normally the student will be operating at a fairly high level in their sport. Generally, I'd say like county level or above, being recognised in kind of county level or above. And what they should do, there's a whole section, a whole set of webinars on our website. I definitely recommend going and checking those out. But broadly, it's a similar process. Like the student wants to find a university that they're going to be happy being a student at and getting a degree from. So it's got to be a good fit academically, but also they will want to be doing some additional research into the universities that will also meet their sporting level and their sporting desire, like that are a good fit for them athletically as well. And if they are interested in pursuing an athletics scholarship, then there is a process by which they will contact coaches with the aim to be recruited and potentially receive a sports scholarship. I'm very happy if you want to drop us a line on advising@fulbright.org.uk. I'm very happy if you want to ask further questions specifically to your individual situation as a potential golf athlete. We'd be very happy to answer those. But hopefully that's just got a sense of the process. If you've got specific things you want to ask, very happy also to answer those if you want to type those questions in. It's also really important to know that you don't have to go to a US university on a sports scholarship. If you can go on an academic scholarship, you can still play that sport at the university, even if you're not there on a sports scholarship. But to qualify for a sports scholarship, you're often going to be needing to be playing at a very high level along the way. Okay, I'm just coming in. A couple of other questions. Oh, okay, have come in the chat. Okay, so a really good question. So IB programs, yes, universities are used to looking at IB alongside things like A-levels. They know that some students in the UK take the IB or take Highers rather than A-levels. So know that that's not a problem. And so the thing to just note, your second question, which is what are the entry requirements and grade expectations? So at US universities, they don't work in quite the same way where, you know, the University of Manchester might be saying to you, we expect students applying for this course to have, I know, 2 A's and a B, that's the grade offer they're making. US universities don't really do that. Because US high school students don't have grades like we do have them. So what a university will do is look at your whole application holistically. So not just your grades, but they'll also be interested in the other aspects. So your extracurriculars, your personal attributes, your context, and consider all of that in this holistic process. So you won't find you need these grades to apply to this university. What I would say is the more selective a university is, the higher I would suggest your UK grades will need to be. And even then, that's no guarantee of admission, just because like a university may receive many thousands of applications, more than they can actually have seats on their programme. And so universities regularly, especially the most highly selective ones, will regularly turn down students with perfect grades, perhaps because they're not seeing the things that they're looking for elsewhere in the application. So it's a tricky question. I know exactly where you're getting to. It's just, it doesn't quite work the same way it does here in the UK. But that piece around holistic admissions is super important. And your second question about what do I need to do and how difficult is it to get a scholarship is another good question. And there isn't like a specific answer. You need to do some research, find universities that perhaps offer scholarships that you would be interested in. Are they going to help? Are they going to be enough to help you get there? And then you'll need to follow the instructions for whichever scholarship it is to apply for that scholarship. Different universities will have different processes, and different scholarships will have different processes. So it really is important that you're doing your research. In terms of how difficult is it, I mean, merit-based scholarships will be competitive, as will need-based financial aid. But you can increase your chance of being successful in a couple of different ways. So you can think strategically about where you apply. Maybe you're applying to a university where not as many British applicants apply, and perhaps that university is interested in having more British students come to their university. So that might help you. You can also think about universities where you are going to be at the top of their admissions pool. If the competition, if you are, perhaps your grades or your extracurriculars are less impressive than perhaps other people applying to that university, maybe if you change the university or applying to, you can make yourself stand out more and be in a better position to apply for to win a scholarship like that. So just being aware of that kind of process there. And definitely do have a look at our website. It's also great questions to ask the admissions officers at College Day. Something that if you're interested in a scholarship offered by a university, it's a really great question to ask them. Okay, great question here. I've got two questions. Is there a way I can rewatch this when it's done? Yes, absolutely. We will be sending out a recording of this session. We've also got loads of other webinars that we have run and recorded, and we pop those into our web pages. You can also find them on YouTube, so please feel free to check all those out if you want to dig into more detail in lots of these different topics. And then second, if I've got a region in mind that I wish to study in the USA, should I consider other universities in the state despite having a specific area I wish to study in? What are the pros and cons to this? This is a really good question. Let's say we take a state that I get lots of questions about, so the state of New York. So the state of New York does indeed contain New York City, and specifically places like Manhattan, which many UK students are really interested in studying. But New York State is actually a really big state with all sorts of towns and cities in it. And even rural farming areas, all sorts of things. It's a really big place. So doing your homework about what you are interested in, what kind of environment you want to study in, is really important. You also want to make sure that the university that you're looking at, you're not just choosing it because of the location, that it's actually a really good fit for you, both in terms of academics, in terms of campus life, in terms of all the other things we've been talking about. And then the other thing is I'd stay open-minded. Maybe you're sure you want to be in a big city, but don't forget to just make sure that you've checked out what it might be like to study in a college town, because you never know, that might actually be something that you're really interested in studying in if you knew more about it. Or maybe you're interested in studying in a college town, but have you also checked out suburban universities? Many of them have amazing campuses and amazing opportunities. And so checking those out as well. And these are all really great questions that you can be asking the university. I think the pro or con of this is, are you just looking at it for location purposes? Have you done the research on the universities in those areas? because you want to make sure that you're going to be studying somewhere where you're happy, where you're going to thrive, where you're going to do really well. But on the other hand, looking at a particular region may help you narrow down your options and may help give a bit of a focus to your research. So perhaps that is a good way to approach it. I don't know if that answers your question exactly, but hopefully that helps there as well. Okay, I'm going to finish up our webinar now. Thank you so much for joining me, and really looking forward to welcoming you all to College Day. Thanks for joining us this evening, and looking forward to seeing you in just under a week. And we will be in touch with the recording shortly. Have a lovely evening. Thanks so much, and see you soon. Bye.